أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Thank you for joining us today on a new session of Al-Mahdi TV, a new show that I would like to title It's Ahlul Bayt and the Youth. And in this session I seek to understand, and we will explore the idea that Ahlul Bayt are a role model for all our youth and every single age group within the youth framework, whether it's a teenager, whether it's a 20-year-old, whether you're newly wed. And we will discuss the concept of, first of all, what it means to be Ahlul Bayt, and discuss the lives of Ahlul Bayt as they have importance within the life of the youth. And you find that, first of all, the first thing that the Quran mentions when it talks about Ahlul Bayt, one of the first things that come to mind is 33:33. Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah number 33, verse number 33, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He, in the previous surahs and in the beginning part of this surah as well, He addresses the women of the Prophet's household, more specifically the wives of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and He tells them that they should go to their homes and recite what has been given to them from the Lord. And what happens is the final phrase of that verse 33:33 is إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen the Ahlul Bayt and He has purified them with a thorough purification. This means that not only are they purified, but purified with a purification that means and implies that no najasa can ever come near them. No najasa, no impurity can ever come near our Ahlul Bayt. So for example, people might ask, when the Prophet was being given ghusl and kafan, did Imam Ali do so because of the fact that, God forbid, there was an impurity in the Prophet? No. He did it to show the people what a proper Islamic burial looks like. Same thing with our beloved Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we talk about Prophet Muhammad Mustafa, however, we need to understand that the Quran and the revelation, the word of God that he received, was a unique, profoundly distinct revelation. That's not to say that other religions did not have truths in them. Of course they had truths in them. Of course. But Islam was that religion that had the complete truth. I've had the blessing of studying Islamic law with Professor Ingrid Mattson of Hartford Seminary, formerly Hartford Seminary. And the book that she recommended us as a textbook for us to read, one of the assignments was, what of other things has Islam incorporated, what of other cultures has Islam incorporated within itself to make it more whole? So for example, I mentioned the fact that zakat was present in Yemen, hijab was present in Iran and in the Arabian Peninsula. But the whole idea of having a new religion was such that it was in line with all previous religions, and it furthered the cause of humanity. What do I mean by when I say further the cause of humanity? And how does it relate to our youth? You know, people might ask, why Prophet Muhammad? Why Arabia? Why Hijaz? Why not other places like the Persian Empire or the Southeast Asia? Why Prophet Muhammad? The first and foremost reason we must understand about the missionhood of Prophet Muhammad is that he was being sent to a completely illiterate society for the very purpose of rebuilding their morality, their ethics, and their submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, for example, al-Mu'mineen Aisha has been quoted to have mentioned, for example, that during the time of Ayam Jahiliyyah, the years of Jahiliyyah, the days of Jahiliyyah, there were many types of marriages that were accepted. One of them was, let's say, a married couple and I shouldn't be saying this on TV, but a married couple, we've heard worse things in the past election cycle. A married couple would spend time with each other, and the husband would go to his wife and tell his wife that she needs to sleep with X man. She would go to his household, sleep with him, and when they would have a baby, they would call it of noble birth, although it wasn't the man's baby. But this type of act was completely accepted in the Arabian Peninsula. Another type of act that was accepted in the Arabian Peninsula was when a group of 10 men would have an affair with a woman at the same time. Another one would be when more than 10 men did. And the final one was the one that Islam accepted, was that to limit the relationship between a husband and his wife and no outside partner from the relationship. Meaning that, yes, in Islam a man can have 4 wives, but to seek extramarital affairs is completely prohibited. Why is this important for us as the youth living in America? We might see the pomp and glamour of having this boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. That everybody in high school does it. So why not me? Why shouldn't I do it? The sole reason for not doing something like this is because of the high level of respect Islam has given the individual and the relationship. Here, you can get away with everything under the sun within the relationship of a boyfriend and a girlfriend. But in Islam, when you get married, there are certain rights that you have to fulfill. And you have to give that person due respect. Otherwise, it's not fair in the eyes of Islam. It's not fair in the eyes of religion. And that's how we must understand Prophet Muhammad and his life. Something that was fair for all human beings. Something that was such that he freed open-heartedly, not for the sake of conversion, but for the sake that you are a human being. You don't deserve to be a slave. You deserve to have rights. So we should prevent ourselves from becoming the slaves of our nafs. And that means that we need to practice zuhd, which is a term in mysticism that's used. But the zuhd of the Shia is different than the zuhd of the Sufi. The zuhd of the Sufi means depriving yourself from this world. The zuhd of the Shia means living in this world, yet being so far above it that you see this world as minuscule, of very little importance. And we must understand that the Ahlul Bayt were the highest example of this type of refraining from the worldly desires. I remember one Friday when I was at Imam al-Khouy Islamic Center, Sheikh Fadl al-Sahnani was delivering the Jummah khutbah, and he mentioned there in one of the narrations, a companion of Imam Ali was with Imam Ali. And the companion went to Imam Ali's house and he saw Imam Ali had very little furniture. And he asked Imam Ali, Ya Ali, why do you have such little furniture? Imam Ali responded by saying, when a traveler goes on a journey, he packs as little as he can to make that journey safe and peaceful for him. I am not for this world. I am not for this world. We are not for this world. We are for the akhirah. Therefore, we should have less of this world, or abstain from the excesses of this world, rather. A story from Imam Khomeini's life comes into mind. When he was in Najaf, the holy land of Najaf, may Allah grant us the ability to go to Najaf. When he was there, one time at his household, a guest came over, and he saw Imam Khomeini eating a watermelon. And he wanted to eat this watermelon with Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini was like, nah, it's okay, you shouldn't have this. No, the guest insisted. He said, you're the Imam, you're Imam Khomeini. I would have a blessing of having food with you. Let's eat this together. Imam Khomeini said, no. Finally, Imam Khomeini gave in to this person's desire. and that person, he ate the watermelon. He figured out why Imam Khomeini didn't want him to eat it. It was so salty that it was almost unbearable to eat. So the man asked Imam Khomeini, after he ate it, of course, Imam, why did you put so much salt on it? He said, look, I saw this, I was thirsty, I was hungry, and I saw this watermelon, and I thought it would be good for me to have it. Then I realized that I need to curb my nafs with having this watermelon as well. So I put salt upon salt upon salt upon salt, just for the reason of depriving myself of this world. Not that he didn't eat it, he ate it. He lived in this world, yet he was far above it. He lived in this world, and he was so far above it that the whole world changed around him, and he stayed Imam Khomeini. That's what we need to learn from Ahlul Bayt. You see, when we talk about Rasulullah, it's with the examples of the scholars that have come into being after Rasulullah that we truly get to understand what his prophetic mission was about, what it was like, how difficult it was, whether or not Prophet Muhammad had many friends, close Sahaba, or not. And then we realize that the suffering of Ahlul Bayt was not without purpose. And then we realize that even during the Prophet's time, there were those who sought to sideline Ahlul Bayt by giving the right of inheritance away from Ahlul Bayt, giving the right of inheritance to other households. They would say Nabuwah and Imamah in the same household? It can't be. Therefore, the Nabuwah stays with Banu Hashim, but the Khilafah goes to Banu Umayyah and then Banu al-Abbas. But that was the whole idea that they had. They wanted to deprive Ahlul Bayt of this blessing, but they never could. Because you see, Imamah is not something that you can snatch away from a person. It's not something you can snatch away from a person. Nabuwah isn't something you can say, this household has it, therefore it can't have the Imamah. No. And what I mean by scholars who have grown up within the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, one specific scholar comes to mind the most. And his surname is Mullah Sadra. In his journeys, in his mystical experiences, he talks about God in a way that one can only hope to understand God. By the way, Imam Khomeini, before he became the father of the revolution, for 30 years in Qom, he taught mysticism, more specifically the philosophy of Mullah Sadra. And that's how he reached such a high station. That's how he reached such a high position. That when we talk about Mullah Sadra, he breaks his spiritual journeys into 4 journeys. One of them, the starting point, is min al-khalq ila al-haq bil-haq. From the creation to the truth, with the truth. The second journey is from the truth to the truth, with the truth. The third journey is from the truth to the creation, and the fourth journey is from the creation to the creation. What this whole journeys, what they summarize, is the spiritual ascent of mankind where he raises himself to the level that he can access the truth completely. He has undeniable, unprecedented knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he comes down to this world and he serves Allah in this world by serving mankind. And it's only the prophets, most importantly, it's only the prophets and the ma'sumeen who are such that they have made their ways through all 4 journeys. and have come to understand the truth. Have come to understand the reality of what this life is. Okay, fine. We say that the ma'asumeen have this knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have come to this earth for the very purpose of serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. What about the rest of us? How do the rest of us live our lives? And it's important here for us to note that we live our lives as exemplars, as signs pointing to the direction of Ahlul Bayt. We should be pointing to the mission of Ahlul Bayt as serving the one God while living in this society. You know, this time we have a lot of fear-mongering that has occurred against Muslims in the American media. Certain presidential candidates have said stuff against Muslims. No names mentioned. But if we live the way that the Prophet lived, I guarantee you those criticisms, those statements would have hit deaf ears. They would have just hit the garbage can in the wall and that's it. Number one, our main goal is not to pray 5 times a day and that's it. Our main goal is not just to observe the fast of Ramadan and that's it. Since I've mentioned Imam Khomeini before, I mention him again. He talks about the traditions of Ahlul Bayt and the hadith of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. He says if you break them down into 100 sections, 98 to 99%, if I'm quoting him correctly, will be about social values. The 2 or 1% that's left over will be about fiqh. The 98 or 99% is what we need to embody in our lives. Look at Ahlul Bayt as examples and those who lived with them, maybe those who were not ma'soom, but those who lived with them. Look at the examples of Qasim ibn al-Hasan. I know this isn't the time of Muharram, but Qasim ibn al-Hasan, he says that death in the way of Imam Hussein is sweeter than honey. Amazing. Amazing, isn't it? Death in the way of Imam al-Hussein is as sweet as honey. We never see that any of the non-ma'soom members of Ahlul Bayt ever had any doubt of the mission of Ahlul Bayt. They never feared in proclaiming the message. They never turned away from others just because the others were disrespectful to them. They never were miser, even though those who possessed the authority were miser with them when it came to submitting to Ahlul Bayt. They never gave up fighting for justice, even though living might not have been the result of their fighting for justice. And as a matter of fact, even if living was not the result of their fighting for justice, they stood up for justice's sake. They stood up for justice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They stood up for justice just like Prophet Muhammad did. Regardless of whatever tragedies and sufferings he went through, he always proclaimed the message of Islam. He always, whether people were throwing rocks at him or stones at him, whether his uncle's wife was putting the pieces of dried wood in his pathway so he would step on them and get blisters, whether his uncle Abu Lahab was mocking him, he knew he had a mission. He knew he had a goal. And that was to deliver not just all of Arabian society, which was the most backward society of its time, but Assalamu alaikum al-Mahdi.
Our records show that you have not updated.
So, get back to what I was saying. See, Prophet Muhammad never gave up just because the odds were against him. He never gave up just because maybe at Badr he had 313 men while the armies of his enemies had 1,000 plus. He never gave up. Why? Because he knew that the message of Islam needed to be propagated, and the message of Islam was a message of justice and peace and humanity. And humanity. He came to a society that used to bury their daughters alive. He came to a society that had no political structure whatsoever. Yes, there was some form of government in Yemen and some form of government in the Persian Empire. But within the Hijaz itself, it was all anarchy. The Arabs of Hijaz accepted the most political power or moral power was given to the sheikh of the tribe. And even though it was moral power, it was more moral power than political power. So they really had no political structure whatsoever. And within this vacuum, they used to fight hundreds and hundreds of wars, some going centuries. Hundreds and hundreds of wars, centuries upon centuries. Why? Because they were in Ayam Jahiliyyah, the times of the Jahiliyyah. Why? Because they couldn't see further than what there was directly in front of them. Why? Because the art of war was a pastime for the Arabs. Why? Because they suffered with the sin of asabiyah. They suffered with the sin of ethnic pride or racial pride. That the Quraysh are more superior than all the others, and a minority has no right. Unless you, in Mecca, if you did not have a tribe to belong to, you did not have any rights that you could proclaim were yours. That's why the first martyrs in Islam were the parents of Ammar ibn Yasir. Why? Because they were newcomers onto Meccan ground. They had no tribal affiliation. And Ammar was a very pious individual. He was a very God-fearing individual. He used to tell his father, "Father, look at these Arabs. Look at the war that they have submerged themselves in. Look at the tragedy that they've befallen, that has befallen them due to their own ignorance." And his father would reply, "You see that clan? See, even in the times of Jahiliyyah, the Banu Hashim were known for their moral character. They were known for being steadfast in morality and uprightness. They were known for their gallantry. They were known for their valor." And he used to say, "Son, you see this household? Whenever they rise, you rise." But Ammar Yasir's family was a newcomer. And when they accepted Islam during the time of the official proclamation of the Prophet Muhammad, they were the first to be martyred. Why? Because they had no one in that city. Why? Because there were stragglers and strangers. Why? Because they were followers of the man who used to free the slaves not for conversion, not for monetary asset, just for the sake of freeing the slave. Just for the sake of serving humanity. Just for the sake of seeking oneness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just for the sake of being, and always having been the vicegerent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, I have the blessing of delivering a talk at Columbia University about the topic of Islamic mysticism. I will have the blessing on April 30th, and I hope everybody can make it, inshallah. The whole idea behind the prophetic mission and the prophetic service was that you serve God for the sake of serving God. That's it. And all of those who opposed Prophet Muhammad, they didn't have animosity towards him because he so, according to them, he created a new religion. No. Although it was really going back to the religion of Ibrahim, of Ismail and Ishaq, and Musa and Isa. They didn't have any problem with that. See, they didn't have a problem in La ilaha illallah. They didn't have a problem with the word Allah. They had a concept of Allah. They did. Allah was a supreme deity, and angels were his daughters. And all we can learn from, with regards to this, is that they worship the daughters as if they were gods as well. But he said no. These Lat, Uzza, Manat, they were all his daughters according to the pagans. But he said no. Why did he say no? Give me 1 second. Why did he say no? Because he understood that breaking the idols of ignorance meant shattering the physical idols of the Arab world. Breaking the socio-economic oppression meant denial of all false gods and deities and service to the one God, the one deity. That service to the one God and one deity implied that you reject Arab ethnocentrism, where the Arab and the Ajam were the same. The Arab and the non-Arab were the same. Black, white, brown were the same. It didn't matter if you were Bilal or Salman. Anyone who could reach the position of clear closeness to Rasulullah could become minna ahl al-bayt. You didn't have to be from the Banu Hashim. Yes, of course, Husaynu minni wa ana min Husayn is specific. Fatimatu bada'atun minni is specific. Ana wa Aliyun min Nurin wahid is specific. But minna, you could reach that level if you were Arab, non-Persian, Roman, wherever you come from. All you had to do is submit yourself to the one God. All you had to do is abide by the prophetic system of justice that was laid down by our messenger, by the messenger Muhammad, on the night of Qadr. And that's it. And you know, we have in history even, yes, in Islamic history we say that there were polytheists. The majority of the Arabs were either polytheists, they were Jews or Christians, or they were atheists. But there were those who did not accept the polytheism of the masses, who found the existing state of Judaism to be problematic for them, and who found the Trinitarian view of God in Christianity problematic for them. They accepted the idea that there was only one God, and you can read this in the book Sharia Wail bi Halaq. He mentions this. He's a Palestinian Christian, I believe. And he talks about this idea that there were still those who rejected all the other forms of theisms, polytheism, Christianity's Trinity, the idea of God of Moses being a tribal God. They rejected all of that. And they accepted the idea of a universal God. And then when they accepted the idea of a universal God, they accepted the idea of a universal message. And it is along those lines that the Banu Hashims were affiliated with. Of course, we accept the idea that Prophet Muhammad, the Nabuwah, his prophethood, was predicted by previous prophets, of course. And it was, undeniably. You can read the Bible and the Hebrew Bible, and you will see proofs of the prophet of Muhammad within them. The whole idea of this prophethood was service to the divine. The whole idea was service to mankind for the sake of service to mankind. The whole idea, give me 1 second, I'm just going to have some water. The whole idea was that you submit yourself to the divine for the sake of submitting yourself to the divine. La ilaha illallah. No God but God. I'm not doing this for monetary wealth. La ilaha illallah. I'm not doing this for position. La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. Neither money, nor position, nor race, nor ethnicity, nor color is a God. Nor power is a God. Nor power is a God. And that's the sublime example of Ammar Yasir's family. That they proved that power is not God. In the very act of being martyred for the sake of Islam, they showed that the path to respect, the path to izzat, and the path to humiliation, dhillat, were two distinct paths. And if you sided with Prophet Muhammad, you were on the right path, the path of izzat, the path of respect. And if you sided with the enemies of Prophet Muhammad, you were on the path of disgrace and humility and nothing but the case. When we talk about this universal message, we must understand one thing, that the Prophet Muhammad, his birth, his life, is such that it predates time and space itself. It predates all the previous prophets. It predates Adam. Why? The Prophet Muhammad himself has stated that I was a prophet when Adam was between earth and water. I was a prophet when Adam was between earth and water. What's the proof that we have? The proof that we have is أَوَّلُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ نُورِي. The first thing Allah created was the Prophet's light. And then the Prophet goes on to say, أَنَا وَعَلِيٌّ مِّن نُورٍ وَاحِدٍ. Ali and I are of the same light. So this light of prophetic missionhood, this light of Prophet Muhammad, and the light of Imam Ali and A'imma Ahl al-Bayt and Fatima Zahra predates all of existence. It predates all of existence, and it serves, it has served, and it will continue to serve. It has served as a guiding light for all prophets, and it will continue to serve as the guiding light for all humanity. What we must understand, my dear brothers and sisters, is that the mission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reason why we have been sent to this earth, is complete submission. The reason why we have been given nubuwah as a means of us knowing the responsibilities we have on Allah and on each other, and not instinct which other animals have. It's because we were given the blessing of free will. And free will is always better than subordination, except when that subordination is to Ahl al-Bayt and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say free will, we must understand that the free will of us human beings is present in prophets as well. That doesn't mean they sin. Their ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so high that they can never sin. Their love of the true love, not this fake, vain love that we see in the streets, but true love is such that it can only be with the divine and the holy personalities of Ahlul Bayt and the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those who have served their path. And al-Maraji', like Sayyid Ali, Ayatollah al-Uzma, Sayyid Ali al-Sistani, Ayatollah Bashir Najafi, Ayatollah Khamenei, Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, Ayatollah Ishaq Fayaz, Ayatollah Syed al-Hakim. Of course, for these, we can give our lives and it doesn't matter. We need to understand that the practical implication of following Prophet Muhammad in the modern era is submission to the marja'iyah. Complete submission to the marja'iyah. The marja'iyah meaning that religious authority that A'imma Ahlul Bayt gave and started, the institution that stems from the statements of Ahlul Bayt is the institution of ijtihad and marja'iyat. Of course, it's one of the main institutions of tashayyu', and it is one of the main institutions spread by Ahlul Bayt for the very reason of the prospering and the success of Islam and humanity. Of course, that means we need to give our khums and zakat. Of course that means that. But what else does it really mean? What else does it really mean? You see, when I say that the following the marja'iyah is following the path of the Prophet and the Imams, it's understanding the fact that knowledge of the 12th Imam, the Imam of our time, is understanding what the marja wants from us, practically speaking. Because we can talk about hadith that say that the Imam al-Zaman is like a sun on a cloudy day. The sun, you can't see it, but you still benefit from the rays of the sun. Of course, those rays are maraji'. But to submit yourself completely to the will of your marja is something that requires actual effort. We can't do blind taqleed. There's no such thing really as blind taqleed in Shia. You have to do your research and see who is the most knowledgeable and the most qualified marja before you make that decision to follow them. Of course. Now, coming to the youth, and I promised that I talk about the youth. You see, it's very easy to fall into the sidelines of sin and to be drifted away from the path of Ahlul Bayt, especially in one's youth. And I like to tell our youth that there is a tradition of one of our imams, and it says that the mind of the youth, or the heart, it's either the mind or the heart, is like fertile soil. You reap what you sow. You get what you actually put in the ground itself. If you put something good inside the ground, if you put knowledge, piety, taqwa, if you put strength, valor, if you put a sense of justice, a high sense of morality, then yes, you will get that in return, multifold. But if you put vain desires, Xbox, Wii, girls, boys for women, of course we're living in America, but that doesn't mean we can't. We still have to abide by Sharia, of course. What that means is that we need to actually come down and understand that the message of Rasulullah was not in theory, it was in practice. The message of Rasulullah was not vain. It was to actively give strength to the moral fiber of society. And the youth, especially, are the moral fiber of society. They live at the precipice of life at two diverging pathways. One that can lead to heaven, and the other one that leads to disgrace. One that says you should partake in the majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, in the mourning ceremonies of Ahlul Bayt, in the birth, in the jashan, in the mawlud, in the wiladah ceremonies, the milad. And of course, you stick to the Quran. You stick to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other path is the path of peer pressure. It's the path of drugs. It's the path of alcohol. It's the path of having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It's the path of alienating yourself from the religion. That path. And I conclude with this message. Let us pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the hastening of the appearance of our Imam. And I remind you of the event at Columbia University, April 30th, inshallah. All of you can make it. Jazakallah khair, and wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.